Brought to you by Telehelping, a virtual assistant staffing company for professionals.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cody Hall, and I'm the host of The Faces Entrepreneurs Are People Too, and the founding CEO of Telehelping, a virtual staffing organization, and the herein sponsor of this podcast. So thank you, Telehelping, for allowing me to spend an hour throughout the week to hang out with really cool people like Rebecca. Rebecca, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Cody?
I'm great. I'm excited. I get the opportunity to talk to wonderful people. And I must mention, because my team always reminds me to do this, is if you like the people we chat with and the content we share, like, share, follow, because I can't pay the people who do all the editing and everything if you don't. And because I can't do it. I cannot do it at all.
I can't
So
either.
perfect. Outsource. In the name of telehelping, hire someone who does. so,
Exactly.
so I stick to what I do well, and it is not editing stuff. so I barely can log into Canva, let alone edit something inside of there.
Oh, Himango.
Oh, well, Rebecca, before we go down tangents, because I'm a tangent king, tell us, who are we chatting with here today? Who's Rebecca?
Well, I am someone that has grown up all over the world. My parents were in the military, so that's how I started moving around every 2 or 3 years in my life. Became a CPA. I was super excited to work for a Big Four accounting. Thought I'd really made it until 3 years later. I realized numbers are okay. I just love people. That's my thing. It's just people. So I since switched, I moved into an HR career for a while, and now I have started my own business about 5 years ago. It's the best decision I ever made. Has given me so much freedom and flexibility with my life and my children and travel and whatever I want to do. And so, yeah, that's where I am now. I'm branching off into doing a little bit more speaking because I find you can impact more people that way. And so here we are.
That's wonderful. Well, a lot of big things that stuck out to me there. The impacting people, which we'll talk about, the running a business and having control, which you think, if you're listening here, and for those who are listening and mostly want to be entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs or people stuck in those big fours thinking about jumping off the ship, uh, you know, Rebecca said that she has control of life. Not always the case for entrepreneurs. If they did have so much control and free time, I probably wouldn't have a job, and so it wouldn't be helping them get to that freedom that Rebecca has. But I want to start off with the HR piece because that's so hilarious. Because I too was an HR person. I survived the human resource world, but I just fell into it. I started a job at Amazon through the military hire program, and they're like, you're qualified for the recruiters are you're qualified for operations leader or HR business partner. Like, which one would you like to interview for? And I was like, I was like, how much do they pay? And he's like, well, one pays 55 a year and one pays 55 a year. The only difference is the HR is eligible for overtime. I was like, I'll do this. I was like, he's like, and this is Amazon. You always get overtime. And so I said, let's do it. And that is literally how I got into
Oh my
HR.
goodness. That is an awesome story. And Survive is about right. I don't even know what it would be like to be in a company during these last 3 years with all the shifts and everything going on to be in
Yes.
human resources. I'm grateful to be on the other side consulting.
It was an interesting navigation since 2020 because I wasn't leading HR like boots on the ground. I was more of the executive in charge of HR. And so, making a lot of those higher level decisions. We had a lot of crazy things happen in HR during that time period when I was running those companies. Was COVID by itself,
Yeah.
right? So COVID by itself was crazy. I took in March of 2020 like 300 people from offices to remote overnight, which was wild. Like while on the phone driving to Vegas from LA, I was like navigating all this. And then of course we had a lot of can't go without saying, a lot of the Black Lives Matter movements and, elements of race coming into the workplace, which at the time, I employed a lot of social activists. And
Ah.
so it was wild.
Well, I'm glad to hear you survived it, and things are, I mean, things seem to be settling down a bit. I mean, I enjoy HR. I do it from the consulting side where I help companies navigate some of those things. But like you, I'm not boots on the ground doing it.
Yeah.
But I really do love working with all sorts of different firms where before I was just with one company, and so for me that got a little bit monotonous, to be honest. And so as an entrepreneur, being able to see so many different like I have clients in LA and clients in Arizona, like clients all over, and it makes it much more exciting and fun.
No, or so are you like the person? So if, I'll give you an example of a funny thing that happened in 2020, right?
Okay.
Uh, I was an executive in charge of compliance and HR, which was kind of like the catch all that wasn't finance or operations, right?
Sure.
So like everything that was needed an executive ended up becoming mine for some reason. And so we had a very thoughtful CEO who wrote an email to the staff, right? That was like, hey, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna make a bunch of quotes. I'm gonna address the race riots, right? From the warmth and coziness of his where did he live? Monterey beachside home, right? And so like and it just went really, really well. I just can't emphasize how well it went. Or is it like, Rebecca, we messed up? Is that type of consulting, or is it like what type of work do you usually get pulled in on?
I do get those occasionally. More so, I help companies improve their bottom line.
Mm.
A lot of culture management, working with the people. What do they want? So they have less turnover, hiring the right team members. So more on the direct hit to the bottom line than disaster recovery. But I have been a part of a couple of those, and I've actually sent out a couple emails. Like the one time we had a summer picnic at a water world, which is a huge water park here in Denver. And all the employees started grumbling about not wanting to be in their swimsuits and not wanting to be swimsuits. So I sent an email that said, it's fine. Swimsuits are optional. And oh, the whole place just started, right. What do you mean swimsuits are optional? Like, well, that's not quite what I meant.
This is not a nude resort, okay? No,
Yeah.
it's that's so hilarious because we know building culture is hard. Like it's like how do you build something you can't actually touch ever? It's intangible, right? And so, but it's all around us, and I see people do it wrong all the time. They're trying, and but what irks me employees, right? What irks me about employees is when the company's really putting effort towards it, and we'll have like events. We had a beach day once in Huntington Beach, right? And everyone was there, and we took the whole day off, right? On a Friday, had the event ready. We're getting ready to do this event, and people. I was lucky. I had people within the companies. My whispers, my ravens for those who are the Game of Thrones fans. My ravens throughout the company that would tell me things, and everyone was just bickering like, "Oh, I'd rather have had the day off. They could have just gave me a $50 bonus, and then we could have saved all this money." And like sure, sure, okay, but we're not here to give you 50 extra dollars, which is going to get taxed as a bonus at 40%. So you're not going to get anything except 30 bucks anyways. And so like we're here to learn about you, your family, your kids, have a good time, like understand like why the company ticks as a whole. But you just can't make everyone happy, which is why I got out of HR because I'm make that someone else's job.
That's so true. I always say though, you can tell how well you're doing by how you measure your complaints. So if they're complaining about how many hours they have to work or the poor benefits, that's one thing. But if they're complaining about the type of snacks you're serving, or if you don't have Bacardi instead of a generic rum, at the party,
I
then
know.
you're doing okay because you just the
I
amounts
like
of
I like that. Measure by the severity of the complaints.
yeah.
I'm actually for an HR person, I'm actually quite rigid in old school my thought process. Jack Welch, the former CEO of GE, him and I are probably far more aligned because my motto is me and my employees we're square every 2 weeks, right? And so like when they started working for me, this is for my virtual assistants, it's for my all of my staff at telehelping. I treat them all very well. Like I'm a very nice CEO. When people allow me to be nice. If you don't do your job, then that's a
Well,
whole
yeah.
version of me. But I always say like we're square every 2 weeks. Like you signed a contract, that contract outlined a compensation, that compensation somewhere in there, you should find something that motivates you to show up every day, right? It gives you freedom and all these things. You know, I don't really divulge like and jump into the realm of, oh, sure, we have company parties for the leaders every year. Right? We pull people together for leadership conferences and things like that. And we do go to beach resorts and things like that. Those are fun. However, I don't do like the Slack kudos channels and things like that. Like, we're here to take care of business. Oftentimes, our culture at telehelping is kind of like the walls we were talking about before this. My walls are all stark white at my house except for one accent wall, right? Our culture doesn't really have a color. Like our culture is Latin culture. Like our company represents Latin America and Mexico. And so our people usually conform to the culture of the clients who they're assigned to. And so the virtual assistants, they
Interesting.
work for telehelping, but really they work for X company. So the culture they're experiencing every day isn't even telehelping culture. Our culture has to align more with, and our HR focuses more on how do we bridge the gap between American companies and Mexican people, right? Because oftentimes they don't always line up together. How they explain things or how they go about things don't always meet the person to where they are. And so we're always playing even kill in the middle. And so our culture really is to support however that other culture may have a deficit or overshoot the Latin perspective on things. So we're just playing shapeshifter the entire time. We don't really have a culture outside of the actual small group that is the headquarters company.
Interesting. That's interesting.
It's weird.
Uh,
It's weird.
do you find that so your telehelping is probably they're working for more than one company, right? At a
Oh no,
time
yeah.
or
Well, we do have a company that we've purchased that does fractionalize virtual staffing, but it operates under
okay,
its own name, by itself still. Telehelping in its entirety, you hire a person, they work for a company, right? So it's one for one, and so
that's
we
pretty
do
nice.
that because yeah, well, I did. That's when we started the company. It was like one of the founding principles. I didn't like how much the virtual assistants were mistreated at the companies I've used before. And I didn't, they were underpaid, multitask, multi-booked. And I was like, whoa, how about this? How about we pay them really well? And then we only give them one client, right? And so the one client compensates the first. That's why we only do full time. And it really, like retention, we do really well. I mean, this is crazy. Like, we just this month lost our first client this year.
That's
So
amazing.
we had zero attrition January through July. And so, and it's just like I was upset, right? We had a perfect record, right? I felt like when I lost the Super Bowl for the New England Patriots, right? After a perfect season. And so Tom Brady's like, no. But, right, we went so many months and never lost a client. And that's because we also are vetting the cultures of the people who we do work for. We don't take all clients, right? If they're toxic cultures, we generally stay away from those companies because we don't like attrition. So,
Right.
so
Absolutely.
we're vetting cultures, which is our culture is weird. We have to kind of like be the culture, of whoever the client is.
Yeah, well, but I don't think you give yourself enough credit if you're thinking of the people that work for you a lot. You're putting a lot of that time up front as far as making sure they have good clients to work for, make sure they're not overworked, but only focusing on one and vetting
Yeah,
out the cultures they're working for. So I would say that it's still you're caring for your people even, and it's not necessarily parties. Like sometimes I'll do like retreats, for example, and not just for
cool.
the executives because it's very popular to do retreats for executives. But
Correct.
when you do them for the people that are actually boots on ground, you'll hear a lot of things that could improve and maybe even impact the bottom line, like more efficient and in those kinds of things. And so I really like to bring them in. They also appreciate being heard, and so they
Yeah.
look for efficiencies and they try harder.
Yeah, that's something interesting I chatted with before because we're so widely spread. And I thought about doing like country specific retreats. But the logistics of running a multi continent
Yeah.
organization ma- makes it a little difficult. I thought about doing it in Mexico, but my wife just, she doesn't have any say in the company, but she just can't swallow the idea of us, um, s- renting out a resort for all of our people. Just
That could
because
get a
it
little
would,
expensive.
it can look, the initial idea is like, wow, that is going to be a really fun party. Like, I
Yeah.
want to be there. Right. And the other part of me is like, this is going to be an HR nightmare. Right. Oh my goodness. Because I've been there as well on the company retreats in the
Oh,
startup
yeah.
worlds.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the
that's
travel retreats are a little more difficult for sure.
yeah, I had left a startup once because I remember sitting there watching the head of our legal dance on the table, and I'm like, I'm getting out of here before we get sued. I'm taking my equity and I'm walking away. So
Smart idea.
that's wonderful. Yeah, it was a great idea. And so, when you're in HR, but you're not in HR all the time, you're doing a little bit more than just HR consulting, right? Or is it
Yes,
just
for
HR
the
consulting?
first few years of my business, I did HR consulting. Now I'm doing a lot of coaching and group coaching. I wanted to scale a little bit, how many people I could impact. And the easiest way to do that was to speak on stages, start coaching in groups. And it's a beautiful community, and people actually help each other and answer each other's questions. So it's not solely relying on me to be there. So it's been a beautiful thing to see.
That's really cool. We actually just yesterday are bringing on a New York Times bestseller. So it would be our second New York Times bestseller. We have a couple authors here as clients, which are really cool. And selfishly, I like when they come on board because now I get a reason to ask them questions, right? And so I'm like, hey, so I'm writing a book. I'd love for you to read it. And so please. So that's right. I mean, I would love the idea of being like a public speaker as a job. Give me that job.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You meet a lot of amazing people. You impact more than you realize. Like I'm just like a lot of times I'll go speak for the Society of CPAs, for example, because they're a big part of my audience. I still love the CPA environment and working with CPA professionals, and they'll come to you and say, I'd never thought of that, or that really changed how I looked at things, and now, and it just makes you feel good. It warms you up inside when you make that impact.
You know, it's so interesting, Rebecca. So one of our clients asked me, he's going to a Spanish conference and he's a CPA firm. He's going to a Spanish conference in September. He asked me this last month. I already said yes. And he wanted me to present for him in Spanish. And so I'm actually going to introduce like his services and everything to the audience of, I'm sure, a couple hundred professional service companies in regards to accounting and CPA services for their organization. So talk to them about different models, things like scale and gap, and doing all in Spanish. So I actually have two speaking engagements this year because I have another one in St. Paul, Minnesota for a VC pitch competition. So I'm really excited. It's free. I'm not getting paid for these things. My travel's compensated, but I'm actually just doing it to get on the stage.
That's amazing. And so you're fluent in Spanish.
I know enough Spanish not to die. And so, which is a very, it's, yo solo hablo suficiente español para no muere. So like, I know enough not to die, right? And which is a sufficient amount of Spanish. If we're really going to measure the importance of how much you need to know, enough not to die is a good amount.
It's better than mine, just enough to get to the bathroom when I'm in Mexico. So I'll give you that.
Correct. No, definitely. Well, I live in Mexico most of the time, so I'm here right now. I'm excited to always. I love speaking Spanish when I get the opportunity. And actually, it's Labor Day weekend, so we have friends and folks who come through Cabo all the time. So we have actually multiple friends who are here this weekend, and one of our good friends came by with his new boyfriend, who is a white gentleman who's never been to Mexico ever in his life. And for the first time, we're hanging out in a group and talking in Spanish. And I felt the need to speak in English to make him feel comfortable. I'm like, look at me. I'm making the decision not to speak another language to allow this person to be a part of the conversation. I
That
was
was
like, hey, I'm not the lost one. Well, you are a traveler, and you mentioned that earlier on. You like being the flexibility of running your business. How have you set up, speaking of Mexico and languages, how have you set up your business to allow you that flexibility?
Well, I'm pretty choosy about the work that I take, and I can work with my laptop from anywhere. I have people that I can call in when things overflow, and when I try to make sure I'm not working too much. The reason why I started my business, I think, is a little bit different than what you may see in other entrepreneurs. I did it to provide the flexibility to be with my children when they were growing up. So I did everything I could to do all the main business calls and Zooms and everything I needed to while they were in school. I loved doing pickup and drop off. They've since grown, which is now why I'm doing more in extending to speaking and coaching and those kinds of things, because I have more time on my hands, and I'm just one of those people that I have to be busy or I'll just drive myself nuts. So that's how I travel. And a lot of times, I went to Africa, for example, this summer for just 2 weeks. So I don't stay forever, but I have someone that can help me while I'm gone to make sure everything stays afloat.
You have to do that. I love buying businesses. I love buy sell business. I like strolling on there. It's my feed for Instagram. I don't social media. Spoiler alert, if I'm messaging you on Facebook or LinkedIn or LinkedIn's me, definitely me. LinkedIn's 90% me. All the other ones, I don't have those accounts. Those are the marketing team, everybody, just for the record. You're talking to a Cody clone. However, my social media is buy, sell biz. And so I love valuing businesses. And so through the process of like figuring out their multiples of EBITDA and everything, like that's a fun thing for me. And one of the biggest things that I chat with people about is I'm like, well, do you have a key person complex, like your organization, or what's that like? Well, does your business run when you're not there? And that's, so if you're able to travel for 2 weeks and like nothing falls apart in your world, pretty good thing. It's a really good thing, not that, because some people can't walk to the bathroom without their business catching on fire.
Well, I like to hire people that could take my job. I know some people that I've met along the way are fearful of hiring someone that's as good as them or better than them in certain skills, for fear of, losing their job. And this is back when I actually worked for a firm. But
Yeah.
I like to hire people that either have the skill sets that I don't. Like, I'm not overly tech savvy, just enough to be dangerous. And so hiring people that really know their stuff and that I admire. And I think that really goes a long way.
It really does. And, I have replaced myself numerous times, probably 3 times. And the first time I did it, it felt really uncomfortable. Like I was sitting there, I'm like, and I had to like find new things in the business to be involved in that needed my attention. Because I was sitting there like, well, I'm in charge. I was the chief operations of English speaking countries. And I was sitting there like, well, HR runs itself, right? Operations runs itself. Like, they have these really strong people. Like, what do I do? And that's a scary feeling because you're like, when someone else is doing so much of the value, you ask yourself, like, why am I at the company?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I have a question about EBITDA, but my computer just told me that it's running out of juice. So hold on one second while I try to figure
No,
out what.
computer. Well,
Okay.
even is the coolest thing since sliced bread. And
Well,
so,
I just went through a buyout. So, how private equity firms are buying out CPA firms now, and
that's correct.
they're offering more than normal value. And have you been a part of any of those? Have you seen that personally?
Well, I've seen, we've had clients, we have a lot of CPA firms and bookkeeping firms that work for us. And so we've seen a couple of them getting bought and sold over the past year. But roll ups right now are very popular. I mean, telehelping as we speak right now, our goal is to buy 7 other virtual staffing companies this year. And
Yep.
so for multiple reasons, and it's important because Well, you have to think about the ability of an individual CPA oftentimes to grow, scale, and lead a business. It has a cap on it. The average CPA is not running a $20 million CPA firm. All right. But if for a company to get really valuable, like 5 million in EBITDA, right? And so if you're under a million in EBITDA, and this is just like general private equity, like metrics. Like if you're under a million in EBITDA, you're generally getting a 1x multiple, right? One times whatever your
Sure.
EBITDA is. And so, but if you're, 2 to 5 million, you're getting like 2.5 to 3, right? If you're over 5 million, you can get from 5 to 10x. A good example is a company that I was a co-founder for, is selling for $110 million. Right, sell. I'm so excited for them.
Amazing.
I thought they were going to fail a couple years back, but we made it. Good
That's
job,
awesome.
team. I believed in you most of the days. And so they're selling, but they're selling for 10 times. They're selling for 10 times EBITDA, and their EBITDA is around $10.2 million per year. Like that's a really attractive. So what they're doing is kind of what we're doing is we're going around and buying up a lot of virtual assistant staffing companies, right? They're between 100 and 250,000 in revenue, and we're buying them for their EBITDA, right? Not because they're valuable, because the truth is at that size they're not really valuable. Most companies that don't, if you don't have a good amount of EBITDA and the company can't run when you walk away from it, the company's pretty much worthless. But
Right.
what these private equity companies are doing is they're buying your clients. And if they're paying for more than your clients, maybe they're paying for a good reputation that you've created. Maybe your reputation with your clients is so strong that they're not going to have to worry about retaining them like they would with other folks, and that can really impact value. We just made an offer. What day of the week is it? Just Thursday, man. Uh, made
It
an
was a
offer just Thursday. I made an offer on Tuesday to somebody, and on paper, their business was worth 75,000. And we offered them 150,000 for their business because they had such a good reputation. Like
okay.
their clients loved them. And I was like, wow, I feel like we could hand this person their money and we're going to retain these clients with no problem. And that is valuable. And so it's a very popular model. It's really big right now in service-based industries, blue collar, plumbing, electricity, HVAC, painting. They're going around and buying up all these businesses, private equity companies, and they're putting them in one organization.
Well, and the way my client has benefited is they're conglomerating the all to one IT using one HR. So they're providing the best so that these firms can
Yeah.
retain their names and everything, but they can get all the services and compete directly with the larger big four firms. So I've
Well,
seen
here,
upside for my client.
well, you know who really suffers? The client of the service. And so what we're doing is we're eliminating the choice, buying power of an individual consumer with this model. They don't even know it. The consumers don't even know it's happening unless they're informed. And so I'd say 1 in every 10 maybe have an idea. But what's happening and this is huge right now, because I know my brother, they just tried purchasing his plumbing company. And so what they're doing is one company is purchasing all these plumbing companies. And so Rebecca has a busted pipe. So Rebecca goes in here and she's price shopping. And so gets a plumber comes out and says, "Hey, Rebecca,
Yeah.
this is going to be $3,500." You're like, okay, wow, that's a really good price. Someone else comes out and they're like, oh, it's going to be $5,000, but here's what we're going to do better than this other guy. And then someone comes out and it's $7,000. You're like, well, you know what? I really like this 5,000. I feel like it's the best value. Now, what happened is the person who owns those companies, they own all three of them.
Yep.
They own
Yep.
all three. So they all have the same HR. They all have the same POS systems. They all have the same CRM. They all have the same.
Yep.
They were going to win regardless. They are using the same parts. Same. They're going to be, having this. But the thing is, what they're getting is they're getting buying power through the service providers and everything. And it's basically what we're doing as well. I jokingly say to some of the people we're buying from, like, hey, listen, I want to give your clients a good home, right? Like you're doing this as a side business. You have 10 clients. You don't have processes. It's an aggravation to you. I'm going to take them into our ecosystem and they're going to exist in a very happy state. And I'm like, so allow me to buy your clients. And so, and it's a really good deal. It's a really good deal for the founders who get purchased too, because they get a good multiple.
Yep, exactly. And that's
So
important too.
no, it's super fun. I loved the merger and acquisition world. I was there for a short period of time. It can get a little ruthless. Funny enough, the guy who I just had yesterday, Rebecca, he was a merger and acquisition, an M&A guy who bought and sold small businesses.
Okay. Yeah. Now I've
Yeah,
quite a few M&A people in my time. A very sexy job. You know, you say to
yeah,
any
right.
CPA, hey, do you want to get into M&A? And they're all ears, you know, they those roles first. It seemed to decline quite a bit about this time last year, maybe a year and a half ago, where a lot of the larger deals weren't going, but some of the small deals were still on fire. So
Yeah.
when I was finding those people, it was just really letting them know that it was going to be more of the smaller deals. But yeah.
Well, it's a great world to be at. I mean, I said yesterday on the podcast because I had an epiphany when I was talking to Patrick, and I was like, you know, selling a business and is like buying a boat, right? The day you start a business and the day you sell a business are the two happiest days you're going to have at that business, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Like you're like, I am my
Such a
own
good
boss.
analogy.
And then you're like sitting here like, I sold my business. Those are the two best days you'll ever have as an entrepreneur. It's just it's how we always say about boats, because if you've ever owned a boat, which I've owned boats, is when you buy a boat, you're like, yeah, I own a boat. And then it's all these problems, all these costs, and then you sell it, you're like, thank God I don't own that boat anymore. That's kind of like a business. So that's
Well,
hilarious.
you still use your CPA background quite a bit, which I do as well. I'm so grateful to understand the numbers and, you know, how to structure businesses and, you know,
Yeah.
try to get as many tax savings as you can. Sounds like you're still using your CPA as well.
Yeah, well, I want to go on the record. I am not a CPA, even though I do have a master's in accounting. I never took the CPA exam because absolutely not. You know,
Please.
and I'll be very clear so you all can understand my mindset. CPA exam's hard. So when I was going
Yep.
through school, I had no intention to ever be a CPA. And when we were in the master's class, like 25 people at Sarah, she was like, who's going to be a CPA? And everyone raised their hand, like, why are you even here? I was like, someone said that I was horrible at accounting and I was going to prove them wrong. Right. And so I'm going to get a master's in accounting. So I know my numbers.
That's
So, but I know a
awesome.
lot.
So
It's
I'm
functional.
assuming that you can do a lot with your life with or without the CPA. I've had so many students ask if they should get it or not, especially because they're going through the finance realm, right? And so they really want to do more of the transactions and so forth. And I always recommend the CPA because for me, that's why I went into human resources. The
Mm,
CPA firm said, you know what, you're a CPA, you must know what you're doing. So yeah, we'll let you be our HR person. And it's kind of served me well throughout the year. So I take the 80 hours of CPE every 2 years. I'm still always wondering, when are you going to stop doing this and keeping it active? But so
that's
far,
so funny. I did a similar thing. So I was like playing with fractional C, like CMO work for a while there, marketing officer and sales, because for up until like the past 6 months where I've been really, really every day involved with telehelping, I was kind of distant and only dealing with very minor things. The team runs the company really well without me. Like it all happens without Cody. And so I was like, just, like having a good time. I show up to my meetings. I worked like 2, 3 hours a day, and then I just would have my life, mostly to hang out with my children. Right. My At that point, those 2 year periods, like my first son was born, then my second son was born. So I was really trying to be present during those time periods. And so I was distant for a reason, not because I didn't want to be. But it was such an important period.
yeah,
However, I was playing around during that time just with consulting to see if I could be a fractional person. I was like, could I do this? And I was a fractional CMO for a top 50 accounting firm, CPA firm. And what was fun about that is that no better person to have someone run your sales who's also an accountant,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so like for me, it was hard for me to like, and during their sales conversations with their relationships, stay in my lane. But you just have so much that you can offer from day one. So you understand exactly how to sell the product, which made that really fun. So I found that that was an interesting place to be in during that fractional period. And I did that for a few months and it was a good time. I probably could have done it forever. It was a really good job to be a part of. And now they're one of my telehelping clients. So I handed them off to, I built them a virtual staffing team. I'm like, look, we got to replace me, but let's do this with like 3 people. And so it was super fun. But I just can't imagine how great it is for you to be working with CPA firms as a person who has that number brain and then also HR because you're sitting there being like, listen, I know why you did this. I know your personality. Let's talk about why we shouldn't do this. Like the
No,
mom
exactly.
conversations at HR.
Yeah, and also I think the owners really appreciate that I come from a bottom line standpoint. So I do care
Yeah.
about people and I want the best for the people. And I'm also understanding what the big picture is between, the productivity utilization and all of that. So, but I bet you were really valuable to the sales team because I find a lot of my clients are always fighting with sales. Whether you're a CFO and you're trying to get them to not offer the world for next to
Yeah.
nothing, because they don't see that financial part. So, my guess is you added a lot of value with that.
It was good. It was helping them sell the dream, as I say. Like, when you're selling your services to somebody, anybody, you want them to see the possibilities.
Yep.
But you want the possibilities to be possible.
Yep.
Like,
That's key.
some of the salespeople in the world, and some people selling the products, like they underestimate what happens when you oversell something, and then I say that disappointment is the difference between expectation and reality, right?
Yeah.
And when you sell someone, and then 3 months down the road, they're like, well, this was what I wanted. Well, yeah, it's because what you sold them doesn't exist, right? It sounded great on that 45-minute call. However, 3 months later, we're giving refunds back to people for their service. And so um, that's a tough thing, and that's a challenging thing with business because I'm sure in your line of work, people's expectations and desires of what they're looking for to get out of HR transformations and involvement can sometimes feel lofty because you're dealing with an unpredictable element, which is humans.
Yeah, and I've also had some of the owners, CEOs tell me that it's fluffy. Like culture it's not something that is tangible and so it's hard to spend money on those things. Um,
Yeah,
so I bring in some numbers and help them kind of see how it makes a difference. But when they actually step into it, do the retreats, treat their employees better, see how just the interactions in the office increase. And so it's bringing more productivity and helping one another. The biggest one is the less turnover, right? Because it's expensive to hire people. I'm sure you know that from hiring all the
yeah,
time. Which
yeah.
question for you? Does telehelp do admin or do you do admin and IT and HR? Like what are the depths of services?
Yeah. So we're doing everything for the clients besides assigning that human being the operational task. And
Okay.
if you, so when someone hires a person for sales, we take care of everything that isn't telling that person, training that person, directing that person how to sell your product. Their IT, their benefits, their pay, their sick leave, their recruitment, placement, and all those things. Check in with HR. We do biweekly health assessments. Like, so we're constantly always gauging people. We have a 5-question survey that gives us an aggregated 1 through 5 on a health score for a person, right? How they think they're doing, how they think the client thinks they're doing, right? How their relationships are with other people in the culture, right? The success of their most recent accomplishment, and I forget the 5th one, and that gives us an aggregate score. Five's basically impossible. If someone's a 5, because someone's lying, right? And so four's if you're a 5, I see a 5 and I'll reach out to the account manager and I was like, hey, listen, let's be realistic. No one's a 5, right? 4 is perfect. And so we're all striving to be 5s. If there are three, that means they're good. It means we just need to be more attentive, ask better questions, right? If there are two, they're on a progressive action plan. And if they're on a one, we're actively searching for the replacement. But
Oh,
we do something, and because I'm HR, that's far different than other virtual staffing companies. When we gauge the health of our virtual assistant, we're not sitting here and saying, how are we making these people better at their job, right? What are they not doing to do good at their job? What we do is we turn our chair to the right and we say, what's the environment look like in which they've been asked to succeed? Like,
mm,
what does that environment look like, right?
yes.
And so it actually has launched. I'm in the process. I can say it out loud now because a couple weeks ago we got our official trademark. We're in the process of launching. We've already had it internally for some time now, for a couple months, but we've launched something called the remote method. It's a trademark process to assist most small business owners in establishing a remote based environment that is, it's remote's an acronym. It's ready for, is it a remote ready role? Is the role you're asking them to do actually possible in remote? If it is, great. If it isn't, do we do a split test and we divide it out into different roles? Is it operationally supportable? Can it be actually operated? And does it have DocuSign versus signatures? Do you have a CRM versus a whiteboard, right? Do you have a voice over IP so you have phone numbers? Right? Is it manageable? What's the management structure look like? Are you doing end of day reports? Right? And really, what does success look like? A lot of people ask someone to do a task and then they say they didn't do it right. Darn it, Rebecca, you didn't run from here to across the street correctly. But you didn't know that I wanted you to do high knees the entire time and pat yourself on the head.
Sure.
Right. And so because you didn't know that, you didn't do it correctly. Darn it, I didn't tell you, your fault. And so, and then my favorite, which is the T, which is time, training. And the biggest one of them all that we struggle with is trust, right? And so, can the three T's be achieved? And then there's the one that ties it all together, executable. Are we going to be able to execute it with confidence? And so, we take them through that framework because we found that people will hire a human being, right? And this is such an HR conversation. So, I'm so glad to have you on. Like, you hire a human being, right? Like, I'm going to hire this human being, this virtual assistant for marketing. And I love marketing. And they're going to solve all my problems. And then you hire the person and you say, welcome to X company. And the person's like, great, I'm excited to jump in. What do you want me to do? Oh, I thought you were going to tell me what you wanted to do. Like, oh, I don't know, man. This is marketing. Like, oh, well, what are you trying to achieve? Well, I want more sales. Well, what does that look like? More revenue. And so what we've started doing is now, while our clients are awaiting the placement of their virtual assistant, right? We have 30-day period from the time someone wants to hire someone to the time they start. I get the lovely job of coaching them as an HR and operational professional to help them build out a role that's ready. And so what's really great is not only do I build them, I take them like, okay, great, we've built this document with all of these expectations and what you're going to do inside of it. And then my last meeting with them before they start their interviews is, how do you give feedback? What if your virtual assistant doesn't do what you asked them to do? Like, what's that conversation look like? Right? How do you give instruction in an effective way? And so I start having the softer conversations on kind of how to be the manager for a human being, because most of the people who hire through us are a one person shop and this is their first hire, or they've never hired a remote person in the past. And so we went from a company who's just like, you want a virtual assistant, Rebecca? Great. Here's Cody. Connect and prosper, pay us, to vertically integrating a training platform that our virtual assistants go through a whole training process to be virtual assistants to align with our remote framework. And now we're vertically integrated to connect all these HR dots. And
Yeah.
so, funny enough, telehelping, while it's a BPO, it is an HR company. We're just an HR company.
Yeah, that's absolutely what
Epiphany.
it sounds like. And the process you just explained is very much what I do with the owners when I'm encouraging them to grow. And for example, we were looking at two great candidates, and he had three people, and he's like, well, I love them both. I don't know which one to make an offer to. And I'm like, well, why don't we make an offer to one today and then another one, to start 3 months from now. And then you can focus on building the business, and then you'll
Mhm.
have ready for you. And just coaching on how to look forward, but also keep your people happy so you don't have that turnover, and keeping them busy. And so I'm talking to their employees too to say, what does your workload look like? And because people, interestingly enough, if they don't have enough to do, they're just as concerned as if they have too much to do. I don't know if you ever run into that where your people are just,
All the time.
yeah,
It's so interesting you say that because we have varying frameworks of the different types of virtual assistants, right? Specialists, coordinators, right? Generalists. And so um, we have a gentleman going through our pipeline right now, and he wanted a cold caller, but he really didn't want a cold caller. But I have to help him understand this. And so
right,
I started taking, so I'm helping him get to the realization where he understands that he doesn't want a cold caller. And I say, well, what are you trying to achieve here? Well, more sales. I'm like, well, let's talk about what you're having this person doing. So he wants him to post on LinkedIn, post on Meta, create content. So he's creating all these things, right? But his one KPI is how many conversations he has. I'm like, great. So I equated it to more of like a divine approach to happiness and joy, right? Like, how do you say like I try to be happy every day, which is kind of an unrealistic thing. You can't be happy every day, right? I can't be happy throughout the day, let alone the whole day all the time. Right. Like, so well, what an incredibly difficult expectation. And so I said, what we're trying to accomplish is joy, right? We're not trying to accomplish happiness. Now, when a sale takes place, how awesome is that going to be? But let me, this guy, I was having this conversation with him because we only give you 3 replacements for virtual assistants because we're not in the business of cycling through human beings, right?
okay,
Um, and so you get 3 replacements, and he was like, "This is your last one, so we really have to double down on what's taking place." And I told him, like, imagine if I worked for you, X person, John Smith. And I was a cold caller who's doing all these other tasks except cold calling. And I call 250 people in a day and I don't make a sell. The first day, man, it's just the first day. I'm new, right? Second day, okay,
right,
what's my first week? Third day, I'm starting to feel anxiety about messaging Rebecca my end of day report. Fourth day, I'm concerned about my job. Fifth day, I'm concerned this is impossible. Right.
yeah,
And so I said, how do you create a role that prevents a person from fearing getting fired? Right. Because the truth of the matter is they don't control your product. They did not make your script. Right. They're not here to make people want your product. You have to design how you want it sold. So um, ultimately, it came down to the point of having the conversation with him that we need to figure out key metrics that success looks like outside of just making actual sales and successful new bookings because you have this person doing 10 other things at one time. So, man,
well,
Rebecca, go ahead.
yeah, to your point, the energy is so important. When people are scared to lose their job, they show up different every day, and they're not going to make sales with that energy. And so it's so important that people
Yeah.
feel like they're supported, that they are good at what they do, and if not, to make that environment, create that for them so that they can succeed. Because otherwise, they want under fear. It just would never work.
Well, no, and I will close on this one simple thought: is a person who needs to make a sell will never make a sell, right? If they wake up and say, I have to make this sell today, they're not making that sell. The desperateness will come out in every word they say and every action they take. If you go into work being like we're gonna make this sell today because we're gonna do great, right? And you don't have that really burdensome pressure, like it's a different environment. But
Absolutely.
Rebecca, we have really chatted, and it has wow, has this hour flown by?
It really,
And so I've appreciated you so much. You're like my first real HR entrepreneur on here, and so and there's our conversation, like maybe even consider that. I really didn't think I was running an HR company until I sat down here. So 5 years into this, I realized I'm running an HR company. How funny is that? So
But
I'm still in HR.
it all comes down to the people, right? And it's, people think that they're in the numbers business or, in selling widgets, but the people are the core of your business. And so everyone's in the HR business.
I agree. I agree. Well, ma'am, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been such a fun podcast, and I'm
Sounds good.
excited to stay connected with you. And please let me know if you need anything. And I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Ciao, Rebecca.
This video was brought to you by our official sponsor, Telehelping. Need support for your business? Telehelping connects you with top-tier remote staff to help you streamline operations and fuel growth. Go to telehelping.com and get started today.